Hey guys, welcome back to another Dragonheir Silent Gods video. In today's video I'm going to be covering another one of the bosses for the Aladia events. So I'm going to be covering the lightning boss in this video. So it's going to be the team that is, takes more damage from Radiance heroes. So using things like Aura or the Rally heroes in the game. Before I get into that though, I do just want to say a huge thank you to Dragonheir Silent Gods for sponsoring this video. If you are enjoying the look of Dragonheir and you want to give it a try, please do click the link in my description or the pinned comment and get involved today. So for those of you who aren't aware, the event to get Aladia is very near in Season 3. It goes live on Friday for anybody who started at the start of Season 3. And obviously, subsequently, it's the second month for anybody who's not quite there yet. So the bosses that will be spawning are the same as always, where you've got one for each element, each of them taking damage from a different type of, a different element, so 100% increased damage. However, this season, the bosses are no longer kind of mirrored copies of the heroes in the game, so it's created a little bit of a different feel, which is really nice to see. The one I'm going to show you today is actually a mirror of one of the existing dungeon bosses. Not too sure how I feel about that because it's probably the hardest dungeon boss. However, the way I've been building my team around this, it's been fairly easy, and at least we know what to expect going into that. So as I mentioned, we're going into the lightning boss. So if we jump straight to that, and we'll see, we'll run through the skills, and then I'll show you the team that I was testing this boss with. So just like all of the other Chaos Shadow bosses, the Continental bosses, you need 270 accuracy for this fight. So the first passive here is the monster can switch between shield form and sword form to gain different skill effects. The shield form basic attacks deal lightning damage to all enemies. Sword form basic attack deal lightning damage to the current target. So as you may have noticed already, this is Ancient Battlefield, the dungeon boss to get your negative runes. So it is a boss that people do tend to struggle with. However, it doesn't seem that bad in Continental bosses. Obviously, the damage does ramp up over time. However, it seems fairly manageable as long as you've got the right kind of tactic. And once again, as always, the boss is immune to all control effects, and it does gain a stackable damage bonus every time it uses its ultimate skill. So the first skill here is Shield Form, deals lightning damage to the farthest enemy and inflicts stun for 5 seconds. If this debuff fails to be inflicted or is dispelled within its duration, the monster will then take lightning damage and enter backfire for 10 seconds. So backfire reduces the damage dealt by 20% and increases damage taken by 20%. Sword Form deals lightning damage to the enemy with the highest attack, ignoring 30% of the target's defense and their shield effect. The boss then does it switches to the sword form, so gains 30% attack up for 10 seconds. Meanwhile, all debuffs on the hero are dispelled. Sword form deals lightning damage to all enemies and dispels all buffs from them. Gains 1 stack of total damage bonus permanently upon every dispelled buff. Switches to shield form and gains defense up 2 for 10 seconds. Next up, we've got shield form, where it deals lightning damage to the farthest enemy again, inflicting stun for 5 seconds. If this debuff fails to be inflicted or is dispelled within its duration, the monster will take lightning damage for 10 seconds. Lightning damage and enter backfire for 10 seconds, which we've already discussed. This is a repeat of the first skill. As you can see, the boss does only have 2 skills, so it repeats them both, each on a 5-second delay. So it's a 20-second rotation. So let's jump into the boss. The best way to counter this fight is you want to have somebody dealing with the stun. So the way I've built around this is I've got Dane at the back, and I've got him built in a accuracy and resistance build with enough defensive stats to survive. The reason for Dane is I wanted to make sure I had somebody to bring attack penalty because my team doesn't have it. As much as he does only bring attack penalty 1, it does make a difference. And he does also dispel buffs from the boss. As you've seen through the skills, the boss gets buffs. Having the ability to remove them is really useful. And the reason he is built with resistance is I want to block the stun from the boss to ensure that I am inflicting the backfire debuff onto the boss to gain 20% damage increase. As you can see, the boss does target the farthest enemy to inflict the stun, so as long as your Dane is at the back, it's always going to go on to Dane or whoever you've got in that position. So you just want to make sure your furthest enemy is built, furthest team member is built with enough resistance to deal with that. Next up, I've got Ardreth as my Witch's Remains user. So I've got her built with accuracy. The reason for this is on her ultimate skill. She empowers her basic skills, which can then apply Witch's Remains. Outside of that, she's built with a good amount of defense, wearing the Ancestral Protection set, just to share some of the damage from the rest of the team. Next up then, I've got Garius. Garius is built in a traditional Garius build, so high defense, using the Gatekeeper's Staff to get those shields out. He is also wearing the Moonlight Mantle mythic artifact to have a chance to increase the healing and subsequently the shields he's putting out. Next up, we've got our first damage dealer. So we've got Linkus here. Linkus is built with 100% crit rate, just over 120% crit damage, and a good amount of attack. He's wearing the Ravatrix's Roots artifact just to get some more attack as well. I've got him built in the Emperor set currently. It's just the gear I was testing out and playing around with, but it did seem to work quite nicely. Finally, I've got my main damage dealer for this team, and that is Aemon Leda. The reason I'm using Aemon Leda here is because I have her on my main account with the exclusive artifact, so I was testing out to see how viable she'd actually be on this boss. So the way she works is she doesn't need any crit rate, so I've got her built with just over 4,600 attack and a heap of crit damage, and she's also wearing the Aerial Ruler set. I don't have her in a mythical artifact simply because I don't have one worth using for her on my account. I could swap this for the crit damage gloves on the test server and gain a huge damage bonus. But like I say, I wanted it to be somewhat realistic towards the builds that I'll be able to throw out on the live servers to get an accurate representation of what kind of damage I'll be able to put out. Aura-wise, I'm using a defense aura from Ardreth for 30% more defense. I do not have any skill timing set for this. So if I just hit run, we'll run through this fight and we'll talk about it at the end. As you can see, though, the first stun went out there. Dane resisted it and applied backfire. Yeah, debuff here, the protected debuff. So that's applied to the boss, meaning he's taken 20% more damage now. Right, so as I said, I'll be back at the end of the run and we'll talk about how it went and other replacements you can bring in. There we go. So we are coming to the end of this run now. 5 seconds left and 44 million damage done. Obviously, the minimum requirement to get the max at the top chest is 22 million. Anything over that is just going to help you more on the leaderboards. And so actually nearly 45 million by the time it actually ended. But as you can see, in terms of the numbers, the damage dealers kind of just did their thing. The healers were brilliant. They kept the team alive. The real MVP in this team was Dane. So it is so important to make sure you've got that person at the back to deal with the stun targeting. There are actually several options you could bring in for that. So you've either got to bring somebody in who's going to bring control immunity. So if we filter by the right elements quickly, we've got Fire and Radiance here. So you could bring Elminster in. However, it's a bit awkward to time him because it's on his battle skill. However, buff blocks is really important as well because you want to make sure you've got the person doing this job is basically who you're going to be using for removing the buffs from the boss to make sure it's not dealing too much damage. Victor is a really good option. Garriker is also a really good option. However, both of those are melee. Liko, however, and Fyra are insanely good for this spot. So they are going to deal with all of the buffs, removing those as necessary, as well as bringing buff prohibition on Fyra. And gains increased resistance based on the total number of debuffs on all enemies on the battlefield. So if you're bringing some more debuffs, obviously you've got 2 from him as it is. You've got defense penalty coming in. It's just going to increase his resistance. He does also bring a resistance aura if you're struggling for the numbers. So you could boost up his resistance as well as his accuracy. Liko is another really good one because whenever there's buffs on Liko, she gets 50 increased resistance. So that's going to really help to get that build going. As well as that, she does heal the lowest HP by 20% of their max HP and gives them defense up for 5 seconds. This could be helpful if you're struggling to stay alive. However, with this setup, you probably won't. And on her ultimate skill, of course, she does remove buffs and faces buff prohibition as well. So Liko is an amazing option for this. As well as that, though, if we just have a look at the spell buff dispelling, There's a few more options you could look at here. So you could bring in Hold Orc. So Hold Orc removes buffs on his ultimate skill. He can also be at the back, so you could use him for that job. Dawn is another good one as well. So is it on his skill? Reduces ultimate energy by 25% and dispels all of their buffs. Who else have we got that's different here? Not really. We've got a couple of rares who you could look at if you're struggling. However, it's not really quite a low chance. Books to 75%. Got here. Okay, so this does book to 100%. However, I feel like Zadie might be. Yeah, so Zadie's a melee, so it's not going to do the same job as Dane is. Obviously, Dane is a great option because he, on his ultimate skill, he will remove two buffs from the enemies, also bringing attack penalty 1, and he just does the job really nicely. I think Liko would actually be better, but Dane just brings some damage as well, as much as it's not a huge amount due to the boss taking 100% more from Radiance. So yeah, that is the team. In terms of damage dealers, you could obviously swap to, yeah, you could build a rally-based team, or you could build an aura-based team for your damage here. If you don't have the exclusive for aura, realistically the damage isn't very good. The nerfs to Theohine were pretty heavy, so I would probably towards a rally team if you don't have Aemon Leda. There are plenty of good damage dealers, thankfully, in rally, however, so if you're looking for options there, even if you don't have some of the legendary options, there's rares like Welby who can do some really good damage, so just bear that in mind. So yeah, that is all for this team. Like I said, it's got no skill timings at all. It's just left to go free for all. You could optimize it a little bit more with skill timings as well, which I probably will do on the live server. But yeah, that is all. So thank you very much for watching this video. Once again, obviously a huge thank you to Dragonheir Silent Gods for sponsoring this video. If you are enjoying the look of the game, please do remember to hit the link in the description or the pinned comment and get involved. But other than that, I'll see you in the next video.